ancestors, I believe, were smarter than us, spiritually and mentally, maybe not technologically, but
you actually pulling up pictures where it was showing pyramids on Mars.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, I was like, what?
We should already be traveling the stars right now. This civilization right now has been severely held back primarily by religion.
A small drop in yield, only minor
Okay. Welcome to Flyshikis TV. My name is Flood, the Alkaline Investor. And here we have today the one and only Billy Carson. How you doing today?
Thank you. Hey, fantastic, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, it's definitely our pleasure. So if you don't mind, man, I want to dive right in. I got a lot of stuff I want to ask. I'm a big fan of yours. And I really look up to you and consider you like one of the OGs in the game when it comes to, passing out this real information and this real life-changing knowledge that we should all be trying to soak up. So
thank you, man.
You're welcome. All right, so if we could dive right in, man. My first question is very simple, but I'm very eager to hear your answer. And it's basically, what do you think is the most important moment, and this is positive or negative, in ancient civilizations, like to affect us, good or bad? What do you think is the most important thing that's happened from your knowledge?
Yeah, I would have to say that the most important thing that has affected us being Homo sapiens sapien on this planet would be the time when the Anunnaki, according to the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation, and also the Atrahasis epic, not by me, but by these tablets, when these advanced beings that we look like them genetically modified our cousins that were already on this planet. We had people on this planet before they got here, but they genetically modified them. And not only that, but they also did a couple of tweaks to us that really has set us on this path that we are now, that we're trying to recover from. The first thing they did was they disconnected a lot of DNA. And so right now, in biology, they tell you we have junk DNA, but in actuality, it's not junk. When they say it's junk, it's not junk. It's just disconnected nodes in the human avatar body. The other thing that they did was, and science is now proving this as well, is that they have shortened our lifespan. And how they did that was they actually took chromosome number 2 out of the human body, fused it together, put 2 telomere caps on it, and somehow reinserted it back into the genetics, thereby limiting us to a maximum of about 120 years. This has now been proven by Harvard University, and they state that it happened around 200,000 years ago, ironically, the same exact time that the tablets say that these Anunnaki beings decided to genetically modify the hominid species on this planet. And so between the telomere caps, the shortening of our lifespan, and the disconnection of our DNA, I think that's probably one of the most biggest, things you can say, like this is an epicenter of where humankind or mankind went down a path that really led us, I think, almost back into a dark age consciously, when we were probably already more spiritually attuned. Our ancestors, I believe, were smarter than us, spiritually and mentally, maybe not technologically, but they didn't need technology. And so we're now trying to find our way back to those things by reconnecting our DNA, reprogramming ourselves, and through science and medicine, trying to learn how to extend our lifespans, which now scientists have just discovered a way to stop the telomeres from shrinking on chromosome number 2 and extend life. So we're headed back towards where we were, but it took us back about 200,000 years.
Wow. Oh, to be honest with you, 200,000 years, that's a little further back than I imagined. I hear of, a lot of different things happening with modern civilizations and, different people conquering different tribes and stuff like that, just from a standpoint of the modern human, I guess you would say then, that were more recent times that I felt like has affected civilization as a whole as well. But you go back a lot further than I'm assuming then.
Oh, yeah. A lot further, yeah. Yeah, they discovered that this mutation, that these several mutations that happened, if they were to happen by just regular old-fashioned evolution, it would have taken multi-millions of years to occur, not 200,000 years.
I agree with you. I totally agree.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So with that being said, I see my next question was, do you think that civilization has progressed or, digressed over the last 5,000 years? But I guess you kind of answered that a little bit, because it seems like what you're saying is that from about 200,000 years ago till now, it's been just a consistent digression or regression for us as a people than anything as of recent times.
Well, we're kind of trying to head back up that curve back into a golden age again. And if you look back just 5,000 years ago at some of the artifacts on this planet, and I've been to these places all around the world. I've been to, Cambodia, to Angkor Wat. I've been to the pyramids of Giza, the Bent Pyramid, the Step Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, the Great Pyramid. I've been to Machu Picchu. I've been to all these places. And if you look around that 5,000 year mark, you recognize that there was superior advanced technology on this planet at that point. And some of that knowledge had been handed down to humans, and we were taught how to duplicate and build these structures and actually utilize a lot of this advanced technology. There was evidence of wireless electricity. There's evidence of Wi-Fi technology. There's evidence of crystal tablets being used, and they're talked about in many different civilizations around the planet. And then all of a sudden, there's these wars that occur, and these wars occur on every continent and are recorded in every ancient civilization's records. And this war was not only just a global war, it was an interplanetary war that included Earth, the Moon, Mars, and also another planet right after Mars called Ceres, and slightly beyond. And so this, I think, was all the way to Titan. And this was the Atlantean War, the last Atlantean War, which, kind of really set us back. So we kind of almost fell back into a quote unquote Stone Age, as this planet, in my opinion, was abandoned by some of these advanced beings. And this is like Earth has become like an abandoned seed planet. I think that people like us, even our predecessors, our cousins, which were not yet Homo sapien, were actually seeded on this planet according to indigenous elders from Australia and many other places that we were brought here and seeded here. And then these beings came, genetically modified us, had a big war, then they left and abandoned us again. So we're trying to find our way back. And right now we are advancing technologically, but we're not advancing spiritually as fast as we're advancing technologically. And that's very dangerous.
I agree. I 100% agree. And to be honest with you, that's kind of how I first heard you, heard about who you were. I was actually watching some clip, and it brought up a video of you actually pulling up pictures where it was showing pyramids on Mars.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, I was like, what? My whole life is a lie. Like everything that I thought I knew, I was like, wow, so it showed me that, if nothing else, there's just more out there there's more out there than what we already think we know. It's like, you don't think that you know anything at this point, because there's another level to it the second you think you know something. So can you speak a little bit more about that? Like a little bit more about like the differences and the things that were happening on other planets, at the same time that the major issues were going on Earth?
Oh yeah, definitely. This is very clearly talked about in the Mahabharata, in the Atrahasis epic, in the Epic of Gilgamesh. These are all ancient texts in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is really called the Egyptian Book of Going Forth by Day. That's the true name of the text. You find out that there are advanced beings. They call them the Natiru. They've been called, the gods. They've been called, the Olympians. They've been called everything around this planet. But these people always come from somewhere else to this planet. And according to these texts, they literally moved in. They created a breakaway civilization in our solar system, not on Earth, in the entire solar system. And there were these beings called the Ijiji, which were this working class Anunnaki level of people that were working and living on Mars, some on Titan, some even on the moon. As a matter of fact, there was something that had happened where one family bloodline had crossed another family bloodline, and that one bloodline was stricken to be banished to the moon when they had their technology stripped away. This is like crazy stuff in this text. It's like you're reading this and you're going, who, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 years ago has time to sit down and make these kind of stories up off the top of their head?
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just too technologically advanced, and the science behind a lot of the things they talk about is being used today. The evidence of it is like, okay, we've actually had to use that specific technique to do these things. including a lot of the weapons that were created as well. I think that a lot of these modern day weapons that we have now were created by reading these ancient texts. That's why when the nuclear bomb, you know, the first testing of it went off, Oppenheimer, who actually is the father of the nuclear bomb, not Einstein, he actually quoted the Mahabharata. He said, now I am, you know, the bringer of death, just to paraphrase it, destroyer of worlds. He got that from the Mahabharata. So they have been studying these ancient texts, you know, for a very long time. But, you know, there were people living throughout this entire solar system. There's a planet out there right after Mars that a lot of people don't know exists. It's called Ceres, C-E-R-E-S.
Okay.
It has more fresh water on it than Earth, okay?
Wow.
Well documented. This is in the history books. This is in astrophysics books. And they don't talk about it much. But when they sent a probe by it a few years ago, the lights were on the planet. And then they tried to say, oh, it was the ice and this and that. Maybe the ice was glittering off the sunlight. But when they got to the backside where it wasn't facing the sun, the lights were on.
Wow.
You know, so there's probably people living right there. So they're always telling us, you know, 20 million light years away, there's this exoplanet. But right above our heads, I think there's people living right above us right now.
Yeah. So do you believe that that's people that are, I don't know how maybe you can say that both ways, but are they ancient people that come from Earth? Or are they people that came from other places? Or are we them that came from other places here, you know, and have kind of like grown into our own race or, you know, humanoid being here on this planet and we came from them? So is it, which way do you think it is?
That's a great question. So it's a combination. So there was a multi-million years ago, there was this ancient Pleiadian war that occurred. And that war was destroying planets and people became space refugees. They were leaving that region of space and moving into other areas, which included our solar system. Once they got over here, they created breakaway civilizations. And then there was another two wars, actually, a first pyramid war and a second pyramid war. The second one was so bad, it decimated a lot of the places, decimated the cities on the moon and everything else.
Wow.
And so what ended up happening is some of these beings and some of the people that were on Earth that had risen to a higher level of civilization had created new breakaway civilizations on the outskirts. There's even evidence of life on Pluto, in my opinion. When you look at the Pluto images, the new HD high-res images that are available on the European Space Agency site, when you just open up the images and then zoom right in, you start seeing structures that look intelligently made. So I really do believe that throughout this entire solar system, there's remnants of those ancient civilizations and those beings from other planets and even humans that had fled this planet after that last pyramid war. Because according to the Sumerian tablets, this war was like a nuclear war. And the evidence of this can be found in Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley. It can be found at Giza on the Giza Plateau, where the sand had been turned to glass. And still today, there's dead bodies laying in the street holding hands in Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley because that was a nuclear blast. It was nuclear fallout. And their buildings turned to glass. And the desert that you see in Egypt is not just because the global warming. That's evidence of a nuclear blast. That's why there's glass underneath the sand in Egypt. You can pick up balls of glass by running your hand through the sand. And that's why they make them into scarab beetles, because they're recognizing the gods of war. But it's pretty interesting stuff, man.
Yeah, man, it gets deep. It gets deep.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like, you know, I honestly feel like there's enough evidence to support a lot of what is out there, if you kind of know what you're looking for. So that leads me to ask you my next question, because I know there's a lot of false teachings out there. Just like I've heard that there is no real picture of the Earth taken from outer space or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and just things like that. So my question is, how do you kind of fact check your resources, and how do you know when you're stumble upon some information that you can actually add to the files as being something that's actually knowledgeable?
Man, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question, because too many people are out here running around doing no research.
That's a fact.
I mean, extremely poor research, and they're taking tidbits of information and missing tidbits of information that may be valid with lies to just to suit their own personal agenda. A lot of them are just trying to create attention over controversy and get likes and views over controversy, which generates revenue for their pockets. Yeah. And then they have a zealot band of people that follow them, you know, and willingly follow them, and they become zealots, and they don't even realize that they're just You know, they just started a new religion, basically. So what I do is I do intensive research, man. Like one thing about research, you can't just say, I'm gonna check this out and go on Google. That's not enough. It's just not enough. Yeah. Now, initially, you may do a Google search because you might be able to shortcut the information and see several valid sources right away.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about this stuff, when we're talking about deep antiquity, we're talking about the formation of planets, we're talking about all these kind of topics that are supposed to be referenced in ancient texts, it requires you to get some good old-fashioned books sometimes.
Man,
okay. And so it's a combination of Google. It's a combination, which not just a couple of page searches either, the first 2 pages, because if something is really being heavily suppressed by the big people on high, it's not going to show up on the first couple of pages of Google a lot of the times. And a lot of the times, the first 2 pages could be disinformation, or it could be information that's quote unquote debunking information to send you away really quickly, right? Don't make you want to dig deeper. And then you got to go and research and look for books on the topic. And you need to dig into those books. And in those books, like in my books, there's always a lot of sources. And that takes you on to other books. And those books take you into other books. And before you know it, you can spend, I've spent a year researching one topic and then traveling to those places in person so I can combine what I've read, what I've researched through about 15 different books. And then for me being there in person, talking to the indigenous people, talking to the elders, talking to the sages, touching the rocks and stones with my hand, and doing my own research as if I was a CSI investigator and analyzing the way the things are constructed, you know what I'm saying? Looking for evidence on the ground, checking out the shrubbery in the area, finding out how the water flows and are there any dried aquifer. I mean, all the information that you have to think about, you really have to dig deep. It's a lifestyle going into that level of research. It's not just, I'm just going to go on Google and in less than 2 minutes, I got all the answers, because that's actually, and a lot of times it's set up to deceive you. So you got to really, really dig deep, and you have to be willing to read actual physical books. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, cool. Like, I definitely agree with that. And my question then is, since like you said, you spent time with the elders, right? Is there a certain people that you feel like are the closest representation to the people of before us? Or is there a certain area of the world that you feel like those people are more likely to be inhabited or whatever? But is there maybe a certain area that you kind of focus on that you feel like you can get that untapped information or that that untapped form of knowledge from those elders?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of places. One place would be in Ethiopia. They hold a lot of ancient knowledge in Ethiopia, a lot of super ancient knowledge. And the elders there are the original Jews, actually. The original Jews are darker than your shirt, darker than my blazer, and they've been banished. They can't even go to Israel, which is, it's a whole nother podcast to do.
No doubt.
There's a lot of racism there, but the people that are practicing their faith right now in this modern day, they actually inherited that faith from the Ethiopians. They actually are Khazarians. They're not, they inherited the faith. That's a whole nother topic, and you gotta be very careful how you word it. But that's what's going on. So you get a lot of great deep information there. And then also the Aboriginal elders. I got a wealth of knowledge in Australia. Went for a walkabout in the outback during the fires, and came across some Proto-Egyptian hieroglyphs that I had heard about years prior. I got guides take me out there. Those hieroglyphs have been now verified by the Board of Antiquities of Egypt as being valid Proto-Egyptian glyphs, and they've been dated to about 5000 BC because of the patina that grows in between the glyphs. There's also Pleiadian glyphs there that have never been deciphered, but the indigenous people there give you the complete breakdown of the story that has been handed down for thousands of years, that they were seated, the first people seated on this planet, that the Pleiadians brought them here, that this is a seed colony, and that there was an ancient galactic war. This is their history, man. You know what I'm saying? It's just incredible stuff. You're not going to get this by going on Google. You got to get on an airplane and get the stamps inside of your passport.
Most definitely. I know a little bit about Papua New Guinea, so I know there still is a lot of natives that occupy those lands that you like. Wait a minute, these people look like this. They're from the South Sudan somewhere, but they're all the way over here in Papua New Guinea. So I learned about that a little while back for sure.
Nice.
Let me ask you this question. How important of a role do you say, or would you think diet is, and kind of tapping into that extra bit of power that maybe lays a little dormant in us right now? Like, how important
Yeah.
do you think the diet plays a role in having access
Yeah.
to that energy?
Diet plays a massive role in you tapping into your ancient wisdom, your pineal gland, which is your third eye, your spiritual antenna, and also even connecting or reconnecting some of the DNA that has been disconnected in your body, tapping into those extra strands and really downloading real wisdom and knowledge, esoteric wisdom and knowledge, and also learning alchemy, alchemically converting things from darkness to light. It all starts with the diet. The diet that we have right now has been presented to us and given to us this way on purpose, because what it does is it literally keeps you disconnected from who you truly are, not this physical illusion, but the true spiritual power and true spiritual being that we actually are. It helps keep the veil over our eyes, and so that's why they feed us the poison, and they give us the medicine and give us the poison for the medicine, and it's this vicious cycle. And the food is it's not healthy for our bodies. It actually is created to speed up the death process and not extend life, And so what they've done is they've really done a great number. I mean, their plan has been executed to the fullest, and so, I mean, especially here in America, obesity is rampant. I mean, there should be a lockdown over obesity. Where's the lockdown for obesity?
I know that's right.
And where's the lockdown for cigarette smoking, which kills more people than anything right now?
Yeah.
So they've done a great job with their plan, but now we have to understand and analyze. If we really want to excel, we become ascended masters and excel to higher levels, we have to change our diets. We have to analyze and think about everything we're putting in our body. We have to eat consciously. And yes, it's going to cost more money in some cases, but you have to make that decision. Do I go hang out this weekend at this club? Or do I spend money on putting healthy food into my vessel and taking care of my temple? You got to make sacrifices in some way, shape, or another. If true ascension, wisdom, and knowledge and understanding is your ultimate goal, you'll make those sacrifices.
That's a fact. And I always tell people as well, like, when you're eating clean, you don't need to eat as much. So you might be paying more for the 1 or 2 items that you're going to need to have that healthy meal, but you're not going to have to eat 3 meals a day. So it kind of balances out anyways, because if you're eating those 3 meals a day, 9 times out of 10, if you're on like the standard American diet, your body's not getting what it needs anyways to fuel itself. So you're going to be hungry at lunch. You're going to be hungry at dinner. You're going to want a snack because your body's never getting what it needs to actually, go about its day and produce its own energy. So I always tell people that all the time, like, it balances out. Once you understand what your body needs is fuel, then that's really all you're going to worry about when it comes to what you're choosing to eat. It's not going to be about what it tastes like after that.
That's so true, man. So true. Yep.
For sure. All right, cool. I got another question for you. What role do you think that, or how much of an impact do you think that women had in these ancient civilizations? Maybe even not that ancient, even if you want to go more recent into maybe the Candace Queens or anything like that. Just what type of role or what type of position do you think that women played for the most part in these ancient civilizations?
When you look into the ancient civilizations, what you find is that there were key periods in different kingdoms around the entire planet where women played a huge role and brought that feminine energy balance that was missing and needed. You had Hatshepsut in the dynastic era of Egypt that really brought this level of balance. She achieved so many great things and brought this feminine energy that was missing for quite some time. And even though she had to play the role, she had to always depict herself as a man. And she would, her story was that one of the gods, her father was one of the gods, it wasn't a human. And that's how she was able to parlay herself into kingship after her husband died. But she ruled for about 20 years and she did a phenomenal job. She brought great energy to the region. She achieved a lot of things with agriculture and things like that. And she even had some conquering wars that she had to lead. And she kept the region safe. And she just did a phenomenal job. You had Wu Zaitan in China, another Asian goddess that ruled with power and leadership and feminine energy. You had Queen Sedonic of Korea. You know, these all were huge dynasties that were ruling in kingdoms all over the planet. You even had indigenous people. You had the Mayan kings and queens. You had there was so many queens that were ruling in ancient times. You know, there was one. I'm trying to remember the name of this one. There was one in Maya, Kalamuti. Kalamuti was a Mayan queen that almost achieved the same exact things that Hatshepsut had achieved in Egypt. It's almost like, were they even the same person? It was almost identical, their entire kind of process to ruling and managing the area, and all the achievements that they did were very, very similar. And so, yeah, they played a huge role. And what's missing right now in today's society is the feminine energy. Look at the state of the world. Look at the current era now. Look at all the wars that have gone on in the Middle East and everywhere else, and all the wars that America has propagated around the planet, and some other countries have been involved in as well, and still going on right now. All these decisions have been made predominantly by men, okay?
Sure.
There's no feminine input into any of these decisions. And so you can see where the balance is off. You must have balance. And right now the balance is severely off. More evidence of this, if you go to Egypt and you see how the feminine energy has been suppressed now for hundreds of years. You look at the women can't even show their face. They must be fully covered. They have no say-so. They have no input. They have no rights. And so, but look at the area. If you go to Cairo, it looks like a gigantic bachelor pad. Everything is dirty.
Really?
Everything is filthy. The buildings are all one color. There's no plants. There's no flowers. It looks like a bachelor pad. There's no feminine energy there. You can see the evidence of it is missing. And so we need to find that balance again as a society on this global planet, not just in one country, but globally. At some point, we need to find that balance again.
For sure, man. And I would 100% agree. I think that maybe like patriarchy has kind of taught men to believe that it's the best way for things to go. Whereas I feel like that there always should be some sort of balance. I think that regardless of whatever needs to happen, or whatever the communication is about, there has to be some sort of balance of that feminine and masculine energy for sure. So great answer, man. I honestly I haven't heard of a couple of the other ones you suggested, so I'm gonna definitely go back and do some research on those as well, because I'm kind of like how you said you kind of got to put all the information that you gained together and come up and formulate with your own understanding of kind of everything that you've gained. So I'm definitely a student of that as well. So that's why I like you. You really like the OG to me, man. I mean, listen to everything that you're saying. Like, man, I didn't hear that from this person. I didn't hear that from that person, but I might have heard something similar. So I kind of combine everything and kind of get to the bottom of it. Let me ask you this question. When did you kind of go down this path of gaining this knowledge and wisdom and understanding? Because like, I know me, I didn't start off this way. I started off, it was a lot of, you couldn't get me to read, and I kind of was one of those kids who I felt like I read when I was forced to, more than out of, because I wanted to. But the second I actually sat down and read for like as a choice, I loved it. And then, I think that's kind of all. You have to kind of push people into something that interests them, and they'll be able to kind of dig deeper and kind of find their love for it. So how did you find your love for this? Like, what was kind of like the first thing that you read that made you say, man, you know what, I need to do this more?
Well, I'll tell you, it was interesting. My father had me reading at an early age. He was pretty strict on me, and he realized that I had the capability of reading. I was reading, I was talking at 10 months, walking at 10 months. I was a big baby because I was 10.5 pounds. So I probably had a little bit of a head start. But, you know what I'm saying? But by the time I was 1 year old, I was able to read complex sentences and real books. I remember the first novel that I read, it was The Sea Wolf by Jack London. I still have a copy of it right now. A mini novel, very small, a novel, but a novel nonetheless. I read it. And my dad would have me quote reading the Bible and quoting Bible verses and all kind of stuff when I was a little tiny kid, 3, 4 years old, toddler. And so I had that reading capability in me. He would make me do a book report every single week. So I really didn't even know any better. I was like, this is, in my brain, I thought it was normal. I didn't know other kids weren't doing this. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I had no context. And then a little bit later on in 1977, we had moved to Miami from New York, and I saw what I can only describe as a UFO in my backyard. I didn't know what it was at the time.
Wow.
Yeah. I knew it wasn't a plane because I knew what planes looked like. We lived next to an airport, Opelika Airport, which was a small private airport. So I used to watch the planes every day. I know what an airplane looked like at 7 years old.
Yeah.
I just didn't see this was a plane. It looked more oval, no wings, no tail fin, no cockpit, no sound. Okay. And it went across the horizon in seconds, not minutes. And then it came back and just stopped silently about 200 meters above me. And then it just went and it just disappeared. So the next day, I went to my elementary school, Rainbow Park Elementary, and I started looking at every single Encyclopedia Britannica, because this is no Google back then. This is the 70s, okay? I got every encyclopedia down on aerospace that they had, and I started researching and studying aerospace and astrophysics and all that from back then. That's how I got started on, and that led me into the rabbit hole much later as to, wow, these structures seem to be advanced. And what I saw seems to be far advanced that we have in any of these books. Could it be connected to ancient civilizations? And, so over time, it just evolved from studying advanced technology, becoming kind of a quasi aerospace historian. I mean, I was studying delta wings and swept wings and all this stuff, man, rocketry and everything. And then it led me into studying planets, which then led me into finding out about ancient civilizations. And it kind of all just went together.
Yeah. Sweet, man. Awesome, man. It seems like I feel like once you start going into your own little rabbit hole of what really interests you and what piques your interest, I feel like that's kind of where you get the most out of it, because it to me, it's kind of like how they say it's not really work if you love what you're doing.
Yeah.
So if you kind of love what you're doing and you kind of love the rabbit hole you found yourself falling into, it just kind of like it becomes who you are. And it just becomes a part of who you are. Because I know as I started to learn different things, I kind of more was a math guy growing up. So, the history and everything that kind of came later for me once I more so started to get an understanding of maybe a more cultural understanding of America. I started to then start to do history back from there. But one question I think that I want to ask you before we let you get out of here, and we appreciate your time, man, is if you can go back into history and be a top advisor for anybody throughout history, and that's on even if you went back to Mars, I don't care who you're referring, who would it be and what would you tell them?
I would go back to the era of the right before the first war that happened on Earth over kingship, and this war was a heavy marker in time. It created a severe ripple in time and space time because it was one of the first wars that used, in my opinion, nuclear weapons. You can find evidence of this in the Mahabharata. You can find evidence of this in the Atrahasis and the Enuma Elish. These weapons existed. They had these weapons. And it's talked about in a lot of other indigenous cultures, verbally handed down as well. I would go back to that first war that started in Sumeria, in Mesopotamia, and I would talk these people out of not using these weapons. I would talk them. I would try to find a way to convince them to not use these weapons, and to the next thing I would do is I would try to be a liaison between them and the humans, and I would try to convince these humans that these people are not gods. These are flesh and blood people just like you and me. They put on their pants one leg at a time. You guys outnumber them. You should just band together and create your own economy, your own civilization. I would try to go back in time and change that whole ripple effect, because that ripple effect went out in space-time and created the civilization that we are in right now. And theoretically, according to some theoretical physicists and scientists and futurists, we should already be traveling the stars right now. This civilization right now has been severely held back primarily by religion. The religious inquisitions of the Pope, which spanned over 700 years, killed over 80 million people on this planet to bring religion globally. It wasn't brought around the planet by love, it was brought around the planet by murder and killing and rape. And it also deterred us and suppressed a lot of technology, because technology was the work of Satan at the time. And so it put us back 700 years. Think about that. Scientists were saying that we could have been on the moon in the 1800s if it wasn't for the Inquisitions. That's wild. And in 100 years, we went from a horse, buggy, and carriage to being able to send probes out of the solar system. We can only imagine where we could be right now if it wasn't for that suppression and all that killing. So 700 years, man, that's a long time. That's a lot of suppression. And, if I could have changed that ripple and created a different ripple, that would have been a great opportunity to go back and do that.
Awesome, man. That's a great answer, man. So do you believe in time travel? Do you think that that's something that has already been established amongst our people, or do you feel like that's something that is like untapped behavior for this species of human, at least?
I think that it's possible. I think that time travel, but there's a little bit of a thing with it now. So my own personal theory here. I think that, when you travel back in time, they say there's a grandfather paradox, right? So the grandfather paradox states that if you travel back in time and you kill your grandfather, how are you even born to travel back in time in the first place?
Yeah.
Well, my theory is that you can travel back in time, and which we know is possible by sending data packets back in time through a laser loop lattice. And if you can travel back in time, but how can you kill your grandfather? You kill your grandfather because when you travel back in time, your subatomic frequency shifts. And when you come out of that time loop, you actually are in an alternate reality. You're in a parallel reality, which means you can kill your grandfather because that's not really your grandfather on the timeline you came from. Now, traveling forward in time keeps you on the same timeline. We know this for a fact. It's been scientifically proven because anybody that's moving away at any particular level of speed from a person standing stationary, we know that the clocks are different by microns of a second or by Planck time, but we know that we can measure that time, and we know that that person stayed on the same timeline. So time travel to the future and staying on the same timeline is very possible. It's only when you go back into the past that something happens with the frequency and you shift into an alternate reality. So I do believe that time travel is possible.
Yeah, well, I believe it's possible as well. I see, little hints at like people saying that they already been able to manipulate it. But it's kind of hard to I guess that word believe is kind of, iffy, because believing in it is kind of accepting it when you don't have enough information. Yeah. But then again, you should be out trying to find information in the first place so you can, so you don't have to believe in you or know. So one more thing, if I can ask you before we get out of here, do you feel like there's a disconnect between like people from native to Africa now and the ones who were kind of the diaspora, everybody else, and the separation? I know that we understand that it's bigger than that on a human level to certain degrees. But just like as a whole for just Africa and people who kind of have left the continent and went other places, do you feel like there's a certain disconnect, and how do you feel like we can kind of change that?
Yeah, I believe there's a major disconnect between our connection to Africa and the fact that we aren't there. Yes, I believe that there were indigenous Blacks around the planet in different areas, but a lot of people came out of Africa originally. It's been proven. You can track it back. I mean, it's not even a mystery. And I believe that a lot of for example, the African Americans, which is not even a real thing, are
all the time.
Have been completely disconnected from our real roots. Religion has destroyed our connection to our ancestors. We're being taught over here that thank goodness for religion, because if it wasn't for that, we'd be worshiping a tree in Africa. I mean, I've seen pastors say this. You can watch video clips of this being said by Black religious leaders. And so our true origins, our true spirituality, and everything about us has been demonized. And we're told that if we even seek after it, we're going to burn in a lake of fire for eternity. And that came through the slave trade, obviously, to keep us focused on being a good slave. And it's been ingrained into our epigenetic memory through the RNA passed down through the father line. And so now we have 15 to 20 generations of epigenetics in each of our bodies that it all has all this trauma from past generations and programming code forcing us to stay disconnected from our ancestry and who we really and truly are and our origins. And to change this, we really need to go into, we have to be real with ourselves. It's going to be very, very difficult for a lot of people to overcome this, but it has to come down to really going into several things. The first thing is clean diet, because a clean diet will help clear your mind and your
Man.
consciousness. Okay, that's the
Man.
first thing. Right now, everybody's walking around in a complete fog. Okay, you got to clean up your diet so you can clean up your consciousness. The next thing is you can begin to think straight and ask yourself the right questions and not be afraid to ask yourself these questions. And then you become a researcher and you seek out the answers to these questions. The next thing is also positive affirmations. By speaking positively to ourselves for 21 days straight, 3 times a day, has been scientifically proven to reprogram and rewrite our DNA, thereby clearing out some of these epigenetics that have been plaguing us, giving us PTSD, suicidal thoughts, depression, and all this other stuff, and have us running on just a pure straight program. It'll give us the ability to become more flexible and understand that we truly have the power inside of us and that we have the power to create our own reality. And I think if we did that and more people were willing to leave their zip code and start traveling, we'd see a reconnection with our true selves.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, man. Great answer. That's a great way to end it. I haven't been all over like you. I've only been to Ghana. I was there for 3 months.
Nice.
And it definitely changed the way I saw things. I wasn't somebody who was too deep into propaganda that they were saying about Africa in the first place. But when I got there and they kept telling me, welcome home, I was able to feel it. You know what I mean? And that's when it changed, you know, and I was like, oh man, this is my people right here. I'm here with my people. You know, like there wasn't a disconnect anymore. It was just like I was looking at a distant relative, you know, and that was that. So I appreciate you, man. Like this, you know, you made my day with this one. When we found out you were gonna actually be coming on, man, it definitely excited me, and I've been making sure that I got my questions together. And you definitely did not let me down, man. You did not let me down. Yeah.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you, brother.
You're welcome, man. Thank you. And I see you got your, is that black tourmaline right there?
Yeah, actually it is. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I knew to see how that goes.
Yeah, man.
You know, got mine too. So, all right, man. I'm just gonna close out now. And like I said, thanks for having you. This is actually Flyshikis TV. This is another great episode of Flyshikis TV. The one and only Billy Carson. I'm Flood. Everybody, see you next time, and peace and love.
Peace.